Welcome to the Career Technical Ed Credentials webinar. I'm Nancy Wagner. For those of you who don't know me, I have been involved with credentialing for, over 40 years here at LACO. I'd like to introduce our CTE Unit Director, Raina Flores Hansen, who will be moderating today, and also Sheila Lewis, who will be assisting. So first, some housekeeping items. There are a lot of people who are joining us today, so it would be helpful if you use the speaker view instead of the gallery view. That way you'll only see me and you'll also see my PowerPoint. Also, please make sure you stay muted throughout the presentation. About halfway through, we're going to stop and open it for questions about the first part of the presentation. So at that time, we'll let you unmute yourself, but we're going to also take questions through the chat, which is probably the most efficient way to do it with a large group. So you can post questions at that time. We'll answer all your questions, and then we'll do the second half of the presentation. And at the end of that, we'll open it up again, let you post more questions on the chat, and we'll go through those. Now, when you're asking a question, it's best to ask a general question, not something that is just so specific that you have to give a lot of background about it. So a general question might be, well, what happens if a preliminary credential expires? That's a good general question. Versus a very specific question about an individual. They left the state, they came back to the state, or they have this much work experience, but not that work experience, and so forth. Those kinds of questions are best done through an email. And I'm going to share my email address at the end, and you're welcome to correspond with me. And we'll email back and forth. And if necessary, we'll set up a phone call or a Zoom. Okay, great. So I'm going to go through some online meeting norms. Again, please stay on mute. Keep your cameras on. We might be able to see you, or you might go ahead and just upload your name, and that's fine too. I'm not going to be looking at the gallery until we open it up for questions. Now, during the Q&A session, as I said, you can post in the chat room. And most importantly, you do need to be aware that we are recording this session, and it's going to be posted on our website. Sheila has told me she's also going to be posting the PowerPoint itself along with the recording. So that will be available for you to review later or to have somebody else take a look at. Okay, so I think we're ready to begin now. So let me go through our agenda briefly. We're going to have a little opener here in a minute, and then I'm going to go through how to qualify for preliminary CTE credentials. We'll do the Q&A. Then I'll talk about how to clear preliminary CTE credentials. I'll go through some resources. We'll have a brief reflection activity. We'll have a closing, a poll, a survey. We'll give you the information about how to contact everybody in the credentials unit. And then at the end, we will reopen it again for more questions. Okay, so let me review our target outcomes for today. We're going to examine the qualifications for the preliminary CTE credential. You'll discover how single subject credentialed teachers may obtain a preliminary CTE credential. We'll review the requirements for the clear CTE credential. You'll become familiar with our CTE professional preparation coursework that's required to clear your credential. And we'll explore how to use our website. We'll go through that toward the end. So hopefully we'll hit the bullseye today with our target outcomes. Now I'm going to turn it over to Raina. Take it away.
Well, thank you, Dr. Wagner. I'm so happy to be here to say thank you for answering the call to serve students in the classroom. We share a common bond on entering the profession of education to help mold and shape the next generations. And CTE is an especially powerful place because of the limitless possibilities we share. Let's see who is attending today. We have a quick poll that Sheila, thank you, Sheila, will activate for us to answer and find out more about our colleagues here. So Who do you think is in the running? Do we have more district administrators, more site administrators, our county office of ed staff members, our classroom teachers, our CTE incentive grantees? Right now, it looks like the teachers are in the lead because I get to see the running here. It's like horses, they're running forward. Teachers are definitely in the lead. Our site administrators are right behind. 56% are classroom teachers, 20% site administrators. We have, let's see, 13% County of Office of Ed staff members, 9% district administrators, and 6% of your CTE incentive grantees. Looks like we have about 73% participation right now. Is it going to go to 100? Come on, everybody. Let's get this poll put together. We have 73%. We'll have 18 people that haven't answered that can make the difference between a site administrator win or a classroom teacher win. I'm not sure. We're 54. We only have 14 more people answering those polls. Oh my gosh, we're at 83% and the teachers still have it at 48% of our population today in this webinar. See, we need 10 more people. Can you make the difference? Or are our teachers going to stay in the lead? Right now, 85% have answered our poll, and we thank you. We're looking at 28 of 58 participants today are classroom teachers. 11 of our 58 participants today are site administrators. Oh, looks like someone just jumped in. Whoever just jumped in, we're taking a poll. And district administrators are 12%, site administrators 19%, county office of ed staff members are 12%, teachers at the highest 48%, and CTE incentive grantees at 9%. It is so great to have you all here today to share this information that is imperative to developing our high quality programs. Dr. Wagner, that's who we have in the class today.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. Some of you who are classroom teachers may be here because you already have a CTE credential and you want to find out more about clearing it, or perhaps you're here to learn how to get a CTE credential. And that's amazing. We're going to help you with that. Okay. So why do you need to understand CTE credentials? Well, if you're an administrator, oopsie, was that poll there? If a teacher doesn't possess the appropriate CTE credential, the grantee can't spend the CTEG or Perkins money on this teacher's program. So if you're an administrator, there's actually 3 reasons why. One is for fiscal oversight. Another is you need to determine if a teacher is qualified for a credential before you hire them. And then once they are hired, you need to know the requirements to clear the CTE credential so you can help them meet that. Now, on the fiscal integrity end, it's really important for the district to make sure that the teacher has the appropriate credential if they're spending those CTEG or Perkins money. The California Department of Education does monitor that, and it's really important that you are clear on how that works. And again, if you're a classroom teacher, maybe you're just here because you want to find out about getting a CTE credential, or you have one and you're looking to see how do I clear it. So we'll cover all of that today. So let's start with a brief overview of the LACO Designated Subjects Credentials Program. LACO is approved as what's called a program sponsor by the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing, or CTC. Now, there are 3 types of credentials under designated subjects that we are allowed to do. We can do adult education credentials, we can do career technical education credentials, and we can do what's called a designated subject supervision and coordination credential. Today, we're going to focus on the CTE credential. Our role is to process both the preliminary CTE credential and the clear CTE credential, which we then submit to CTC for final approval. Although our program started way back in 1991, to serve only 23 districts in LA County, we grew to serve not only the entire county, but we also serve districts and ROCPs statewide. We also offer the professional preparation coursework that's required for the Clear credential, and we do that through our partner, University of San Diego. So more on that later. So let's start with what is a preliminary CTE credential. Well, this credential is used for teaching middle school and above. So it can be middle school, high school, charter schools, adult schools, ROCPs, or other types of training schools. Community colleges don't require credentials. However, they love our credential. If you are looking to go to a community college and teach a career technical ed subject, having our credential will allow you to waive an equivalency of some teaching experience or work experience. And that's different for every community college. But our credential is welcomed by community colleges, just not required. Our credential is issued for 3 years. So when you get your preliminary credential, the clock starts ticking with the issuance date, and you have 3 years in which to meet the requirements, submit to clear the credential through us before it expires. Needless to say, we like you to wait until no later than maybe 4 or 5 months before your credential's going to expire. Don't wait till the last minute. Now, the credential has subject authorizations. That's what the Commission on Teacher Credentialing calls them, that are based on industry, work experience, and background. Those subject authorizations are what we call the 15 industry sectors here in California. I'm going to show you those in just a second. And again, that's all based on work experience. And here they are. These are our 15 industry sectors. And later, if you look through our application packet, you'll see that there is a list from CTC of the 15 industry sectors, along with the career pathways that go under each of these industry sectors, and then possible occupations that come under those pathways and sectors. And that list is really helpful when you're looking at, well, do I have the work experience for this sector or not? So you'll see that when you take a look at our packet, and later I'll show you where to find our packets. All right, so what CTE subjects may be taught? Well, many people are not aware that even though you get an industry sector on your credential, that doesn't mean you can teach everything under that big industry sector, because those industry sectors are very broad. For example, let's say you get your credential in fashion and interior design. That's a very big industry sector that covers subjects ranging from cosmetology to interior design to upholstery. So just because your work experience qualifies you for one sector doesn't mean that you have the right kind of experience to teach every subject in that sector. Cosmetology versus upholstery is a good example. If you have a cosmetology license and the work experience to go with it, you clearly qualify for cosmetology under fashion interior design. Does that mean you're qualified to teach upholstering? Probably not, and vice versa. So it's important to take a look at the background, and it's the employer who is responsible for looking at that background. So even though your credential says fashion and interior design, that district or that ROCP or that adult school, when they employ you, should be looking at your specific work experience that qualified you for that industry sector. Now, it's important to also know that some CTE subjects fall in different industry sectors. For example, robotics. Commission on Teacher Credentialing has placed robotics in 3 different industry sectors. They have it under engineering and architecture, information and communication technology, and manufacturing and product development. Determining which of those sectors we would give you on your preliminary credential is based on LACO looking at your work experience specifics and your background when you submit your application. So if there's a specific industry sector that the district is hoping for you to get, because they already know where they teach robotics, then it's helpful if we know that. And we can look for whether you have that specific work experience, or we can reach out to you or the district and we can say, look, we see this under a different sector than what you're requesting. Here's why. Let's see if there's some other work experience so we can place it where you need it. Now, one other warning on this, the CTC subjects do not always fully align with where the California Department of Education has the CTE model curriculum standards. Here's an example, animation. Well, CTC puts animator as an occupation under manufacturing and product development. But the California Department of Ed has said that animation may come under arts, media, and entertainment, or manufacturing and product development. So again, it's really looking at your work experience. What have you done? And if you're looking for arts, media, and entertainment, we're going to be looking more for multimedia productions for you to qualify under AME. So that all comes down to your work experience and what you submit with your application. Truly, the devil's in the details on this. All right, so how to qualify for the preliminary CTE credential? There are three options. The first option, and the most common option, is that you must have 3 years of industry experience. Now that could be 1,000 hours per year of paid or unpaid, could be volunteer experience. So CTC says 1,000 hours is equivalent to 1 year. That's the easy way to get there. But let's say you don't have 3 years, you don't have 3,000 hours. Let's say you have 2 years or 2,000 hours of industry experience. Well, then we'll ask you, do you have any college coursework that you took? And if you have 24 semester units in the subject, the specific subject and industry sector, that could make up for that other year. Or if you have an industry certification, that could count for 1 year. Well, let's say you're still coming up short. You only have 1 year or 1,000 hours of industry experience. Well, then we can look at again at your college courses. If you have 48 semester units in the subject or industry sector, that'll pick up for the other 2 years. Or if you have only 24 units, that'll be 1 year. And then the industry certification would be a 3rd year. Okay, so there's different ways to go about it. But again, just keep in mind, this is a CTE credential. It's based on industry work experience. That's what it's all about. Now, CTC has said there is what they call an industry experience recency requirement. And that is that at least 1 year of that work experience must be within the last 5 years or 2 years within the last 10 years. Well, you're wondering why. Well, let's say somebody worked in an industry 40 years ago, but they haven't been there since. They've been doing something else with their life, not related to the industry. Well, CTC says, and rightfully so, that industry experience needs to be up to date. Industries move rapidly. We want it to be state-of-the-art, up-to-date experience. So one of the things you can do is, if you've been teaching, for instance, and your industry experience is old, your teaching experience could actually count in lieu of the recency requirement. The other thing is if you do an occupational internship, again, paid or unpaid, that could bring you up to date, or any post-secondary vocational training. So there are ways we can work with that recency experience, and we can help you with that. So how do you document your work experience in the industry? Well, the work experience must be documented on employer letterhead with an original signature. We have a sample letter in our application packet. You could actually draft the letter and then go to your employer and say, this is what I'm required to do. And it has all of those details about the job title, the job duties, when did you work, the dates, and how many hours per year you worked. Well, let's say that company no longer exists. Or what if you were self-employed? What if you were a small business owner or you did freelance work? In that case, you could do the self-verified letter. And the self-verified letter, there's also a sample in our packet for that. And basically the write-up for that is the same. What years, how many hours per year, what were the job duties? But the difference is it has a statement that under penalty of perjury, this is all true. And then you have to go get that notarized. Additionally, you need to provide 5 items of backup documentation to prove that you did what you said you did. And examples are tax records, pay stubs, business cards, business license, customer letters, purchase orders, and so forth. So there are a variety of documents that people use for backup. So what are the other requirements to get the preliminary CTE credential? Well, you have to have graduated from high school or received a GED or have a college degree. Now, there are some sectors and subjects where you must have a license. To teach nursing, for instance, you have to be an RN, you have to have that license. Cosmetology, you have to have that cosmetologist or manicurist or barbering license. If you've never been credentialed in California or never received a certificate of clearance or a permit, then you need to go through the fingerprinting process and go through live scan and have those fingerprints submitted to CTC. Now that means you also have to apply for a certificate of clearance. And so once your fingerprints have uploaded to CTC through live scan, then you'll go online to ctc.ca.gov. You're going to pay them $52.50. You have to answer some professional fitness questions, and you receive a certificate of clearance. Now that process is usually pretty fast. Depending on how busy they are, it might only take 5 days or so. If everything clears through the Department of Justice, the FBI, and so forth with your fingerprints, it can be pretty quick. If there's a problem for some reason, then it is turned over to a different unit in CTC. They have to do their investigation and so forth. They'll reach out to you and they'll tell you what the holdup is if there's a problem getting that certificate of clearance. But once you get that, then you can go ahead and apply for the credential through LACO. One of the things you'll see in our packet is what's called the CTC form. It's a 41-4 fillable form. And again, it asks you for contact information. It asks you to fill out those professional fitness questions and so forth. There's a LACO information form, which gives us all of your contact information and what industry sector you think you might qualify for. And if you're already employed or you've been offered a position in a district or school, there's a place for you to let us know that as well. There's also a data survey form we ask you to fill out. It is optional, but we do turn in aggregated data to CTC, so we appreciate it if you fill that out. There's an intent to complete the clear credential requirements. It's a one-page form you need to read and sign, and it spells out, I understand that once I get my preliminary credential, here are the things that I'm going to have to do in order to clear it. There is a LACO processing fee. We require a $100 money order or cashier's check. Later on, CTC will have you pay them a fee as well. Now, if you just did the certificate of clearance and you paid $52.50, then you're only going to owe them another $52.50 when they reach out to you and say, okay, do you want to get your credential approved? Here's what you need to do. Otherwise, you'll pay the full $102.50 at that time. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Now, sometimes districts have teachers with single subject credentials in a career technical subject. And some people are not aware. There are actually 5 credentials in California that qualify as career technical ed for single subject credentials. They are what's called agriculture education and agriculture specialists, business education, home economics, industrial arts, and industrial technology education. Now, industrial arts is a bit of an older single subject credential. They don't do it anymore, but sometimes we see individuals who have that credential. So if an individual has a single subject credential in that career technical ed, you can look at this chart and you can see, well, what are the industry sectors that they're allowed to teach using that single subject credential? So for instance, if you have a single subject credential in business, you could teach the 3 industry sectors shown: business and finance, information communication technologies, marketing, sales, and services. There's really no reason for a single subject credential teacher with a CTE credential to have to apply to get a designated subjects CTE credential. However, there is one disclaimer. If the district is spending Perkins funds, that means the district is going through federal audit every once in a while. And the federal audit will look, and if that teacher doesn't have a designated subject CTE credential, they're going to question it. And the reason why is in the California State Plan for CTE, it states that single subject career technical teachers must have industry work experience. Doesn't state how much. And so over the years, we've come to assume that it's probably that 1,000 hours. They're looking for at least 1,000 hours. Now, there is a possibility, though, of some equivalencies, like a teacher externship or industry education. So what we recommend is this: if you're a district administrator and you want that single subject teacher to teach that industry sector, have them document their work experience or the equivalency, and then have that on file. And that way, when you go through a Perkins review, you can pull out that documentation and explain that, yes, in fact, this individual does have work experience in the industry. Now, let's say you have a single subject teacher in an academic subject. For instance, an art teacher, or a single subject math teacher, or English teacher. Well, in that case, then they would have to apply for the designated subject CTE credential. And here's how they would qualify. They would need 2 years or 2,000 hours of paid or unpaid industry experience in that industry sector. Plus, we can count a year of full-time teaching on their single subject credential in any subject. So you know that 3 years that we were requiring for a preliminary credential, we can basically waive one of those years if that single subject teacher has been teaching on their single subject credential. So that takes care of 1 out of the 3 years, and that leaves them needing 2 years of industry experience. Or let's say they have 1 year or 1,000 hours of paid or unpaid industry experience. Well, then how do we get that other year? Well, again, let's look at your college transcripts. If you have 24 semester units in that subject, or if you've done an industry certification, then that will count to take care of that 1 year. So 1 year of work experience, 1 year of teaching, and then that 3rd year is met through either the 24 units or an industry certification. And there you have it. Then they're ready to qualify for the credential. All right, so let's say you've submitted your application to LACO, and by the way, that's mailed, hard copy mailed to us in Downey. So again, had you held a credential in California? If not, you applied for a certificate of clearance. You need to do the live scan, apply for that COC before you even submit your application to us, or concurrently, because we can't do anything much with your application until we know you get that certificate of clearance that your fingerprints have cleared. If you've held a credential before, then you don't have to worry about that. So in comes your application to our coordinator, Linda Matzik, and then she reviews it. If you are missing anything or she has any questions, she will email you, ask for that information. In the meantime, she'll hold on to your packet. It goes in our pending file, and you can continue to answer questions or send the information that she's asking for. Once it's all there, then she's going to recommend you for the credential to CTC. And that's when she'll send you an email with our letter of credential recommendation. At the same time, she's going to file that recommendation with CTC. CTC then is going to send you an email. It's going to come from do not reply at ctc.ca.gov. So you got to check your spam and your junk email or you're going to miss it. It's very, very important. And it could take 2 to 3 weeks, depending on how busy they are. But let's say a month goes by and you still haven't gotten that email. Well, then we want you to reach out to us and let us know. We need to find out if something was wrong or did you just miss it? Because once you get that email, you've only got 90 days to reply. And if you never reply, eventually we have to resubmit the recommendation to CTC for you. So then you're going to follow their email directions to complete processing with them, which means go on their website, answer their questions, and pay them their fee. Most importantly, pay them their fee. About a week after that, they're going to send you another email and they're going to say, congratulations, we have approved your credential. And then you can go onto their website. You can do a screenshot. You can download the pretty version of the credential. And that's what you're going to want to provide then to your district. So here's one of the things that I get asked a lot. Let's say, this all takes, say, about a month or so. Let's say your district is really needing you to start teaching sooner than later. Well, when Linda sends that recommendation to you, first thing you want to do is share that with your employer or your soon-to-be employer. Once they have that in hand, they can file to their county office for a temporary county certificate. And that temporary county certificate is usually for about 3 months. And it will cover you so you can be in the classroom while you're waiting to get that email from CTC and respond to them and ultimately get approved by CTC. So it's really important when Linda sends you that recommendation to provide that to your employer, or if you're applying for jobs, you're going to want to upload that in your EdJoin application when they ask you for your credential, because that's sort of your temporary recommendation until your credential gets approved. And then you're going to want to go back after your credential's approved and provide that to your employer or start using that credential in your job applications. So something that a lot of people are not aware of is there's a requirement in California that you must have an authorization to teach English learners in your classroom. And in California, pretty much every district, every class that you would teach, they're going to have English learners. Well, unfortunately, your preliminary CTE credential doesn't include that authorization. So what that means is that your district must file a waiver every year with CTC until you clear your credential. And there's a cost which your district will probably pass on to you. So there's a form they'll have you fill out. There's a fee they'll collect from you. Sometimes they'll reach out to us each year for an update on whether you're making progress toward meeting the requirements for clearing your credential, because the sooner you clear your credential, the sooner they can stop filing those waivers with CTC. Once you get your clear CTE credential, that's when you'll be qualified. And I'll show you how that's going to look a little bit later when we talk about clear credentials. Now, there is an exception. Some people take what's called specially designed academic instruction in English. It's called CDI. And then they file for a CCSD through the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. That stands for Certificate of Completion of Staff Development. That used to be the way most people would do it. And the reason why is because there were a lot of CDI classes here and there, but there aren't too many anymore. I can think of one university in Southern California that offers an online CDI class, and it's not offered very often. So otherwise, the way you're going to qualify is you're going to take a Teaching English Learners course through us to clear your credential. So you do have that option. That's the end of the presentation on the preliminary CTE credential. We're going to stop now and open it for questions about preliminary CTE credentials. Again, the second half of our presentation is about how you clear a preliminary credential. So please hold those questions till later. So go ahead and post in the chat room now. Let's see what we got here.
I do see one. It's scenario Q. Candidate has esthetician license. Sorry, moved on me, but hasn't practiced profession in 10 years. Can they qualify to teach an esthetician class?
Well, that's a good question. Well, one of the questions I would have for them would be to look at when they got their license. If their license is up to date, did they have some continuing education units, CEUs, in order to keep that license up to date? That may take care of our recency issue for them. So we take a look at how is their license up to date? How did they get it up to date? Anything else they've done, like any other type of industry certification. So that's the kind of detail that we would get into to see if we can take that older work experience, but find them up to date in some way so they would qualify.
Another question we have here is, what if you have a multiple subject and a credential for educational specialists? Is there any way that we could start this credential for CTE anew?
Multiple subject credentials and ed specialist credentials are very similar to a single subject academic credential. So we really would waive 1 year out of the 3 years of work experience if you have been teaching. So that's a good thing. That leaves you with only needing 2,000 hours or 2 years of work experience. And so my slide about how single subject teachers meet that requirement, that would be the same if you have a multiple subjects credential or if you have an ed specialist credential.
How are the industry certifications obtained?
Well, on our wonderful website that I'm going to show you later, our CTE website, LACO has posted a list of the most common industry certifications that CDE shares. There are many different, and they're by industry sector. There are many different industry certifications. EMT is a industry certification. Nursing assistant is a certification. Microsoft Office Specialist is an industry certification. Adobe, Acrobat, or any of the Adobe certifications count. Cisco is a certification. A+ for automotive NATEF. I could go on and on. Those are typical private or what they call vendor certifications, where you go online, you pay a fee, you study their materials, and then you take a test. And if you pass the test, you receive the certification.
We have another
So
comment
you
here.
can go to our website to see some of those. Sorry.
Sorry. So there have not been major changes to the process this year, correct?
No major changes. I'd say the last change was June 30th, when CTC stopped waiving their fee due to COVID. That really helped people. That was $102.50 toward a credential that they had waived for about a year, maybe a year and a half. And come July 1, that ended. That's pretty much the major change that occurred.
I also have another one. To be clear, all applicants need to take the Teach English Learners before we are given a clear credential.
Yes, and so what I'm going to do when we're done with the chat about the preliminary questions, I'm going to share with you all of the information about how to clear a credential, and you'll see that that is one of the courses that has to be taken.
Someone else to ask, is there another, is the only way to find out if we qualify for a CTE credential to submit an application, or can I email someone with my industry experience and avoid the application?
Well, you can't avoid the application if you want to get the credential. But I understand what you're saying is you don't want to send in the application and pay the fee and then find out that you're nowhere near to qualifying. Linda Matzik gets a zillion emails. I help her with emails, so email me directly. And a good way to start is to send me your resume. Tell me what industry sector you're interested in. If you have transcripts, you can scan them. We can start a correspondence back and forth, and I can get a pretty good idea of whether you're going to qualify before you actually fill out the application and send it in. You can also call our office and talk to Lucy or Christina. I'll give you their information. But probably the most effective way is just to email me. I can take a look at what you have and we can go back and forth.
We have a question about the timeline. The only class I need now is the advanced teaching, and it is in January. And my preliminary crew expires June 1st. Will it be okay?
You'll be fine. I teach that class. I happen to be the only teacher. It's going to be fine. It takes us 7 weeks in that class. And what I usually have people do is start getting their packet ready. Sometimes I even have them go ahead and mail it in before the class is over. And then I can let Linda Matzik know as soon as you have a passing grade, and she can go ahead and process. But oh yeah, if your credential doesn't expire till June 1st, you're going to be just fine.
We have an industry sector question. My son has years of experience teaching in employability skills. Would that fall under business education?
Teaching employability skills. Under a single subject credential? Does he hold a single subject credential?
This would be Ms. Sharp.
This is probably somebody.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe they'll email you with some more specifics.
Yeah,
that would be great. I have another question.
Can qualify for single subject? They should apply for a prelim CTE credential. So email me and we can talk about that.
We also have, can a CTE teacher teach an A through G class?
No. Yeah. Now there are some exceptions. There's a process that your district and your school has to go through to get a UC A through G designation. UC doesn't really look at the credential per se, but often what it comes down to is whether the school accepts the CTE class for A through G credit. So let's say you have a arts, media, and entertainment credential, and you're teaching a stage technology class, theater class. If in fact the school accepts that course for A through G, or for the art credit, high school graduation credit, and if in fact they submit that course for UC A through G approval, then in that case, yes. UC doesn't look at the credential per se. They look at whether it's approved for high school graduation credit, the A through G credit, and then they look at approving the course itself. So It's possible, yes, but there are a lot of steps that your district has to go through first.
We have some very specific questions. I have a DSST and ROTC. I've taught for 20 years. What CTE credential would I apply for? Would this be more something they should email you for?
You can email me, but I can tell you briefly, ROTC comes under what's called special subjects. That's a designated subjects, special subjects credential. We're not approved to offer that credential. You would have to go through the San Diego County Office of Education. That would be the closest program sponsor to get a special subjects credential. If you want to email me, I can send you that contact information.
We have another one. Are there additional education classes to obtain a preliminary credential?
To obtain a preliminary credential, no. Once you get your preliminary credential, then there are credential courses that we provide that you must take in order to clear your credential. I'm going to go through those in a minute.
Another one has, I have an ITE credential, and according to Title V, it states that these teachers do not need to obtain a CTE credential. Do I need to have a CTC, add CTE to my ITE subject?
Okay, so when I went through that slide on single subject credentials in career technical subjects, the last one on that chart was in fact we call it the ITech, the Industrial Technology Education credential. So if you have a single subject Industrial Technology Education credential, you may teach any of those industry sectors that are listed on that chart. However, what you should do for your district is document a year's worth of work experience or an externship or an industry certification, because if your district is spending any CTIG or Perkins money on your class, then they need to have that documentation on file. And if you do all of those things, then no, you do not have to apply for another credential. Unless if your district wants you to apply for another credential, they're the employer and they can require it if they want to, but it's really not necessary.
We also have another one regarding the letters. I work in construction and have had many contractors, employers. Do I need a work letter from each one?
Well, you need to come up with that 3,000 hours. So it really would depend on how many hours you worked. So it could be that you need multiple letters to come up with 3,000 hours. But if you work 3,000 hours for one employer, then you're set. You only need that one.
I have another
kind of union verification work for that.
I'm sorry. I heard something about union verification. If you're in an apprenticeship journeyman program, they can write a letter verifying that.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I also have another one about, I have a bachelor's in psychology, December 17th, an AA in psychology, sales and marketing for over 20 years, and have a woman's clothing business, no teaching credentials. Also have social and behavioral science aid. Will I qualify?
Well, you've got two different industry sectors there. Psychology comes under education, child development, and family services. And really it only qualifies, it might come under health science and medical technology if you'd work as a psychologist or a psychiatric aide. There's probably not a lot you can do with that, but with the other, you mentioned sales and a clothing business, that all would come under marketing, sales and services, entrepreneurship, and you'd probably qualify for that. So give me an email with some details and we'll chat.
I have a kind of a similar one, but a little different. If you have both business education and industry technical education credentials, not to mention single subject math, and currently teaching CTE courses with the college coursework in those careers, what other requirement would we need to get out CTE credential?
You're really going to have to email
Yeah,
me because it
that was-
depends on what industry sector, and I need to really look up your current credentials too. So shoot me an email.
Yeah, I think the next one's going to have to talk to you too, because it says they have no industry experience, but they'd like to see an example of what a teacher with a multiple subject and special education specialist would teach.
The only industry sector that they would qualify for if they haven't worked in any other industry is the industry sector that's called Education, Child Development, and Family Services, because that's about teaching. Teaching is the experience under that industry sector, or the other type of experience would be early childhood education, childcare occupations, and so forth. So otherwise, if you're what you really need to do is take a look in our application packet at the list of industry sectors and occupations. When you look at the occupations, if you haven't done any of those occupations, any work experience under that sector, then you're not going to qualify. But education, child development, and family services, you would qualify to teach that based on your teaching experience.
We also have, if you already have a BCLAD or a CLAD designation on your credential, do we need to do the Teach English Learners class?
No, and I'm going to go into that with the clear requirements, but basically, if you have a single subject credential, a multiple subjects credential, or an ed specialist credential, we will waive most of those requirements. You'll only be required to take one course, and the one course will be Foundations of CTE Curriculum. And the reason we make you take that course is you have to learn the CTE model curriculum standards in the industry sector for which you're teaching. The only other thing you'll need to do then is you'll have to teach a CTE course for at least 2 semesters, and then you can apply for your clear CTE credential.
We have quite a few. It says, what if your CTE courses is A through G approved? Then they can correct. Then I guess then they can teach an A through G course. This is from Paula Hart Rhodes. I think maybe can you email Dr. Wagner with those specifics to help answer that clearly?
Yeah. It's a district decision about that. And it's a matter of how they have submitted that UC A through G course. Mm-hmm. Again, UC doesn't ask about credentials per se, but some districts prefer to have their UC A through G courses only approved with a single subject credential. It just varies according to the district.
Dr. Wagner, I'm wondering if you want to proceed, being that I know you have the rest of your presentation, and then we'll, if we're unable to answer your question today, we put Dr. Wagner's email address, and I'm hoping that in the next piece of this, you might find your answers. So we'll make sure that you do receive the answers.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Right, let's talk now about you have your preliminary CTE credential. It's good for 3 years. The clock is ticking. What do you need to do in order to get everything done to clear that credential? Well, the first thing we're going to ask you to do is to complete early orientation. These are 6 modules that take about 25 hours. It's a free online training. That's just to get you going, our early orientation. And then we're going to have you take our professional preparation coursework, and I'm going to go through that with you. Within that 3 years, you're also going to need to get a teaching job, and you're going to need to teach career tech ed, but that only counts after the issuance date of your preliminary credential. Sometimes we get people who taught CTE prior to getting this credential. That won't count for purposes of clearing your credential. Once you get your credential, then the clock starts. You have to teach 4 semesters of at least 1 CTE course each semester. Now, there's also what we call the supervision and mentoring requirement. You're going to have a supervisor who evaluates you, and they need to do documentation for us for 2 semesters. So they're going to come in once a semester and observe you. And then they're going to do a write-up on our form, and then they're going to sit down and give you feedback on their observation. They're also going to complete a contact log for us and tell us other times they've gone in to observe you, or they've popped in, or they've had meetings with you, or emails or phone calls and so forth. So we'll need 2 semesters of documentation from your supervisor. Your supervisor is also supposed to assign a mentor to you. It cannot be the same person. You have a supervisor who serves in one role, and then a mentor who serves in a wholly different role. Typically, the mentor is a teacher or former teacher. It's someone who has at least 3 years of experience, who has cleared their own credential. They may not be in your subject area. They may not be a CTE teacher. They might be a single subject teacher. However, it's up to the supervisor to select a mentor, assign them to you. That mentor will also have to come in and observe you for 2 semesters. They have a form that they need to fill out for us, and then a feedback log that also tells what they did to support you. What kind of contacts did they have with you during those 2 semesters? There is a US Constitution requirement for teaching credentials. Now, if you took a college course, like a political science course or a government course, sometimes certain US history courses may even cover the US Constitution. We'll take a look at your transcripts and we'll tell you if you qualify or not. In that case, we can waive that requirement based on the course you took. If not, you have 2 options. There is an online course that you can take. There's only one course that's approved for that. Or you can take an online exam. And there's only one university with that online exam that is approved by CTC. So we'll provide you with that information and you can decide how you want to meet the US Constitution. There's also a CPR certification requirement to clear your credential, and it must be for adults, children, and infants. It cannot be just adult CPR. Even if you're only teaching adults, doesn't matter. To clear your credential, you must have adult and pediatric. Now, that certification actually doesn't have to be current. It doesn't have to be valid when you clear your credential, as long as it was valid at some point after your preliminary issuance date. So you may have had it, I don't know, maybe 6 months after you applied for your preliminary credential and then it expired. That's okay, as long as you have the documentation and can provide it to us, that's great. Otherwise, you can take an online CPR class. It used to be that CTC would require the face-to-face classes, but not anymore. They will now accept an online CPR certification. So let's talk about that coursework that you need to take through us. Well, our partner is the University of San Diego. Now, not to be confused with UCSD. This is not University of California, San Diego. This is a private university. They've been our partner since 1991. We call them USD. And they offer our courses for clearing your credential. The first course you'll take is classroom management, and then a course called Foundations of Curriculum. Then that teaching English learners course and students with special needs that I talked about. Those are each 7-week courses, and you will earn 3 semester credits from University of San Diego. In some school districts, their CTE teachers may use those credits to move across the columns of the salary schedule. Just depends on the district. After that, you're going to take a course called Teaching Portfolio. It's only 5 weeks long, and for that, you'll earn 2 semester credits. There's a course called Health Education for Teachers. It's only a week long. You'll earn 1 semester credit. Now, this is another one where if you took something in college and it's a general health course that covers, drug abuse and health and nutrition in general, we might be able to waive it. Again, we'd have to see your transcripts and we may ask you to go online and get a course description, and then we'll know whether or not we can waive that course. Otherwise, you can take that course through us. Now, we offer all of these courses many, many times per year and at least twice each term, sometimes 3 times each term. Here's the sequence, though. You can only take 1 course at a time. We don't like you to overlap courses because we don't want to overwhelm you and we want you to really learn the material. So 1 at a time. So foundations of classroom management, foundations of curriculum, and then teaching English learners and students with special needs, then teaching portfolio. Now, if you need that health education for teachers, you may take that concurrently with any other course because it's only a week long. We also have a course called Advanced Professional Training for CTE Credentials. There was a question in our chat about that, someone who says they're going to take it in January. Why would you need that course? If you weren't able to get a teaching job and teach for 4 semesters, or you got that teaching job and you taught for 4 semesters, but your district would not provide the supervision and mentoring for you, then you won't be able to clear your credential. In that case, you have an option, and that option is to take our Advanced Professional Training for CTE Credentials. It's 7 weeks long. It's the only course, though, that combines 2 days of required Zoom meetings on Saturdays. And the reason why is one Saturday, you go through a mock job interview and you observe other people doing that. And then the other Saturday, you're going to do lesson presentation. You're going to do a PowerPoint and present to the other students and to me. And those are 2 of the things we require and why we have those 2 Saturdays of Zoom sessions required. Here's our flow chart. This basically covers everything that I've already gone over. On the right-hand side, again, you're going to see those early orientation modules that we want you to do in the first 30 days and then send us your certificate of completion. There's the courses and the order in which you should take them. And again, the US Constitution, the CPR. Now, over on the left side, you're going to see a purple box, and that's those people who have other credentials. If you have a single subject or a multiple subjects credential or an ed specialist credential, or you have one of the older vocational education credentials, which is what we called them before we started calling them CTE, or even an adult ed credential, then we take a look at that and we might be able to waive some of those courses. And especially for single subject, multiple subject, and ed specialists, we pretty much waive everything except for one course, and that's the CTE curriculum course, which you must take. When you're hired, you notify us, yay, I got a teaching job. This is where I'm teaching. Here's the name of my supervisor. Here's their email address. And we reach out to your supervisor and say, would you please assign a mentor to this individual? And oh, by the way, here's the documentation, the observations and documentation we'll need you to do for 2 semesters. And then we send the mentor the same thing. Here's the documentation we're going to need from you for 2 semesters. And again, then you've got to teach at least 1 CTE course for 2 years. That's 4 semesters. Now, substitute teaching does not count. So you can be a long-term substitute in CTE, and unfortunately, it still doesn't count. We really want you to get that teaching job, even if it's just a part-time teaching job, that will count. And as I mentioned, if you don't meet those requirements of the supervision mentoring and the teaching experience, then you may take that advanced professional training class and you'll get to see me on a couple of Saturdays. Once that's all done, you're going to submit your application for the clear credential, which comes to us. And here's what it's going to look like. We have that application online. I'm going to show you where to find it in a minute. We're going to need your transcripts for all of that coursework that you took through USD. We're going to need a letter verifying your 4 semesters of teaching CTE, and it has to occur after the preliminary CTE credential issuance date. We're going to get that good documentation from your supervisor and from your mentor. We're either going to need a transcript, if we don't have it already, of the US Constitution course that we approve that you took at a college, or we're going to need proof of you taking that exam and that online exam that I mentioned earlier. And we're going to need the proof of the CPR certification for adults, children, and infants. You will need to pay $100 again. That's our processing fee. You will need to fill out our information form, our data survey, You'll need to fill out a CTC 414 again. You have to answer those professional fitness questions again, and we'll need a copy of your preliminary credential. At that point, then, Linda will review all of your materials once you've mailed them in. If nothing is missing, then she will send you an email saying that she is recommending you for the clear credential. You'll get that recommendation letter, and you can give that to your district to show them that in fact LACO's recommending you for the clear credential to CTC. Linda will file that with CTC, and 2 to 3 weeks later, you're going to get an email again. They're going to require you to log into your account at ctc.ca.gov. You're going to follow their directions. You're going to pay them $102.50 again. And then about a week later, they'll send you another email saying, congratulations, you've been approved for your clear credential. And then you can go in and download a screenshot and provide that to your employer. So here's how it's going to look with that wonderful EL authorization once you clear your credential. The credential is issued for 5 years, and all you'll need to do is renew it every 5 years online. Currently, it's $100 every 5 years, and you just got to remind yourself to do it so it doesn't expire. So on that screenshot that I mentioned, what you can look for is that EL authorization code S17C. So you're going to take a picture of that screenshot and you're going to give it to your district, and you're going to say, guess what? You don't have to file those EL waivers anymore. And they will be very glad of that. Once you've cleared your credential, you have met all of your obligations. And again, all you have to do is every 5 years, renew it online with CTC. So I want to share our website with you briefly. This is our laco.edu/CTE website. And I believe Sheila is providing that in the chat for you. Now, this covers all wonderful things CTE, credentialing, funding, curriculum, and so forth. And somebody had asked earlier about industry certifications. And if you clicked on that third blue button that says curriculum, there's a section on our website that lists many of the available industry certifications by sector. But otherwise, if you click on the credentials button, which is the first one, that takes you to our credentials page. And here it is. On our credentials page, you're going to find our coursework schedules, all of our application packets, which are numbered down the side. And if you're applying for a preliminary CTE credential and you don't currently hold any other credential, you would choose packet number 1. However, if you hold another credential, or if you've already done the certificate of clearance, or if you have a child care permit or a substitute credential, then you could choose packet number 2. And then down the road, when you're ready to clear your credential, you would choose packet number 5. On the right-hand side, there are a number of resources available for you. There's also a frequently asked questions section. There's also contact information. You can click on a name and up will pop an email address, and you can email people directly. Also, the information about the US Constitution requirement is toward the bottom underneath all the packets, and you can find out how to meet that requirement by clicking on that link. So guess what? We're ready to do a survey. I'll turn it back over to Raina.
You know, I'm so impressed by the participants in our audience. These questions are on the money and very, very focused and specific. So we definitely are so glad. We're going to make sure that you get all the answers. But at the same token, we look forward to seeing the survey feedback you provide that will help inform how we can continue to meet our educational partners' needs. So please take a moment to answer the survey. And we're also going to kind of test your I guess attention today, or how much you've grasped. So can we please we have a few questions for you that are very important for you to remember. So the first question, and this will be in again a poll. So Sheila will please activate that. A preliminary CTE credential is issued for how many years? 1 year, 3 years, or 5 years? A preliminary CTE credential is issued for how many years? 1 year, 3 years, or 5 years? Let's see. Let's see, do we have everybody there? Almost. How many years of work experience is typically needed for the preliminary CTE credential? 1 year, 3 years, or 5 years? How many years of work experience is typically needed for the preliminary CTE credential? 1 year, 3 years, or 5 years? And number 3 is a clear CTE credential is issued for how many years? 1 year, 3 years, or 5 years?
So a preliminary CTE credential is issued for 3 years. Most of you got that correct. How many years of work experience is typically needed for the preliminary CTE credential? Well, the typical is 3 years or 3,000 hours. Most of you got that correct. And then the final question, a clear CTE credential is issued for how many years? 5 years. Every 5 years, you have to go online to CTC and renew that clear credential. Good job. Give yourself.
Everybody see the answers there? Everybody see the answers?
Very good.
Great.
So what we'll do next is let's take a moment to reflect upon what we've learned today. And I'd like your feedback about whether we met our target outcomes. The way I'd like you to share your feedback is with the reactions button at the bottom. And I'd like you to give me a thumbs up if you believe that we met each of these as I go through them. So do you feel that we examined the qualifications for the preliminary CTE credential? Give me a thumbs up if you feel we did. Did you discover how single subject credentialed teachers may obtain a preliminary CTE credential if they need to? Again, please give me a thumbs up if we met that outcome. Did you learn the requirements for the clear CTE credential today? If so, give me a thumbs up. Did you become familiar with the CTE professional preparation coursework that is needed in order to clear the CTE credential? Thumbs up if we met that outcome. And then finally, did you learn how to use our CTE credential services website? I shared with you our LACO CTE website and then the specific credentials website as well. So hopefully we hit our bullseye with our target outcomes today. Thank you. All right, we're going to go to more questions in a minute. But first, I wanted to give you all of the contact information in our credential services unit. So Linda Matzik is our coordinator. There's her email. We also have help from Lucy Domingo and Christina Fuentes. And Lucy and Christina also take phone calls. So we have 2 phone numbers there. Either one is fine. Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And feel free anytime to email me at my laco.edu email. I don't get nearly as many emails as Linda does, so I might be able to get back to you and spend a little more time with you. If you want to email me, you're free to do that. Or if you prefer to email Linda or one of the other ladies, that's fine too. All right, with that, We're going to go back to the chat.
Well, we have quite a few. So I did ask I tried to ask somebody if we needed a little more information. I know that Ms. Sharp is, if none of the questions on the personal fitness form apply, should my son just put an A everywhere on the form?
Well, it's a yes, no. You have to either check yes or no to each of those questions. If the answer is no to each of those questions, then you don't have to complete the explanation form pages that come after that. What I always recommend with our application, certain parts of our application are fillable forms. My recommendation is download our app. It's all a PDF. Go in and complete the fillable form pages, and then go through and print the completed pages. That way you're not going to waste paper printing things that you don't need, like that explanation form. That explanation form, which is 5 pages, is only needed if you had to answer yes to any of those questions.
Jeff Palmer did put a comment, WASC may look at the credential, and that's the Western Association of School Accreditation. Not to, and I appreciate that entry, because yes, credentials are reviewed, and it's important that you talk to your district. Thank you.
But
Jeff,
if you go through a WASC, yes.
So will the dashboard. So that's, that's where your administrators have to make sure
Yeah, WASC and
credentials
CTE.
aligned. Yep.
Sure.
Also, we have, I'm an instructor in a transit agency, teaching bus system technology. Do I qualify to get a credential? I've been doing it for 3 years.
You would qualify for transportation industry sector, having worked, not teaching, but other types of work experience for Metro. So my assumption is that if you're teaching now, you probably worked previously in some position for Metro.
I have a single subject math. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I cut you off?
That's okay. That's the work experience we want to see, not the teaching experience. We really want to see the industry work experience.
I have a single subject math and engineering degree. Is there an alternative to the industry hours requirement? Teaching or trying to teach engineering courses.
So if you've been teaching math, that'll take care of 1 year. If you have an engineering degree, that'll take care of another year. So then what you're still needing is 1,000 hours of work experience, and it can be unpaid. Sometimes people have something and they don't even think about it, especially if it's volunteer experience or unpaid. So why don't you shoot me an email, send me your resume, and let's chat a bit through email and see if we can find something that would meet that 1 year.
It says we have a potential teacher interested in teaching at janitorial custodial class. Would this be under the hospitality and tourism sector?
No, custodial actually comes under building and construction trades. It comes under the residential and commercial construction pathway, because the work experience is interior maintenance. So yeah, that comes under building and construction trades.
And I also have, if I have my ITE credential and I've been teaching for 26 years and I have over 3,000 hours of experience and I teach media arts and broadcast journalism, do I qualify for Perkins funding?
So you have a single subject ITech credential, and you need to document a year's worth of work experience outside of teaching. If you don't have any industry experience that you can document, you would look at an equivalency like an industry certification or a teacher externship. There are kind of different ways to meet that equivalency. You want to have that documentation on file in case your district goes through Perkins review.
I also have a question. Is there a list of schools that hire CTE teachers with a preliminary CTE credential? Would that be adjoined?
Yeah, you'd want to go into EdJoin. So the best way to find a CTE teaching job is just like any other teaching job, all of the districts use EdJoin, as do district adult schools. Some community colleges even use EdJoin. So that's the best place to look. And one of the things we teach in our first course is how to do a good EdJoin search. Because sometimes people don't understand about what categories to select and also what keywords to use. And so that's one of the things we'll do in our first course. We're going to teach you how to do a good EdJoin search so you can really find those CTE teaching jobs.
We also have that, does coaching a sport fall into a professional category?
Does what? Doing what to a sport?
Coaching a sport.
Well, coaching a sport. What we're looking at is sports comes up in two ways. If you've been an athletic trainer, which sometimes coaches are for schools, they serve in a dual role. That may come under teaching, being able to teach athletic trainer as a course under health, science, and medical technology. So we would look for some work experience as an athletic or sports trainer. Now, if it's more on the recreational side, it may come under recreation occupations, which comes under hospitality, tourism, and recreation. So it really just depends on, you know, the type of coaching and the setting that was used. Again, we're looking for industry experience. Teaching or coaching alone typically won't count, but it really just depends on the setting and the situation. We can't count anything that would be done in an education setting under a teaching contract, let's say. But lots of times people have a day job and then they're coaching on top of that. And so something like that could get counted.
We have one more. Many community colleges offer a program called Business Information Worker. Under which industry sector would this fall? And in parentheses, it covers productivity, software, i.e. MS Office, communications, and office skills.
Well, even though the word business is in there, it sounds more to me like information and communication technology, if it's dealing with software and systems. Business and finance does cover, though, office occupations. So again, it really kind of comes down to the details of what they're looking for.
And we had one more that I was hoping to get a little more information about, but maybe what if I, and this is Frankie, what if I want to add 2 more credentials to the one I have?
Well, it depends on the one you have.
Right.
So, right. So for instance, if you already hold a CTE, a designated subject CTE credential, and you're wanting to add some additional industry sectors to that, let's say you have a CTE credential in business and finance, and you'd like to add marketing, sales, and services, or you'd like to add transportation, or whatever the industry sector is, then you would reach out to me. I would look up your current credential, and then I could send you the packet to add. But basically, you're going to have to do the same thing as far as documenting that 3 years worth of work experience, or a combination of work experience and college courses. Now, if what you hold is a single subject credential, you cannot add a CTE to a single subject credential. You cannot add CTE to a multiple subjects credential. So it really depends on what you're holding, but I suspect you hold a preliminary or a clear CTE credential and you're wanting to add more sectors. So shoot me an email and then I'll know what packet to send you, and we could talk about what kind of work experience you have.
I have a designated subject credential. Matt, that's I'm not sure if there was.
Yeah, I'll need to look up your credential. I'll need to see if you have a prelim or a clear, because the process is a little different. And then I'll talk to you about what industry sector do you think you qualify for, and I'll have you send me a resume or tell me a little bit about your work experience. And we'll make sure that you qualify before you submit the packet.
Yeah, I think that one was in relationship to the ITE credential and the Perkins funding earlier. Is that correct, Matt?
A single subject credential, you can only add authorizations by taking the CSET. You have to take an exam and then go through a university, and they'll make you take a course or two as well. We can't add CTE subjects to a single subject credential. We don't deal with single subject credentials. We deal with designated subject CTE credentials. But again, email me. I can look up your credential. You can tell me what you're looking for, and then I can give you the specifics.
I'm just so excited for our CTE industry to see so many wonderful qualified people that are taking the time to get the CTE credentials and to do so much for our students. I've been saying this all year long. It's a great time to be a part of CTE. We are upskilling and reskilling, and just what we are doing for California. We are literally rescuing California with what we're doing inside the classrooms and outside the classrooms by teaching our students how to be good workers, how to be competent workers, and how to be part of a community. So I thank you very much. And if you have any further questions, you have our emails, you have our websites, and please stay tuned with our, you will now be a part of our newsletter distribution so that you can see what other items we have for you that are available to you. Because this year we're looking at focusing on so many pieces that teachers need to have for instructional strategies that fall under, that will help you in the classroom. So please keep in touch with us. We're here for you. Thank you.